All right, welcome again. This should be a pretty fun episode. This is gonna be a fun week. We got a lot of cool projects to do. Here's all our parts. So what we have, I ended up buying the PSC, the replacement cylinder for the PSC cylinder that was broken, that was bent, I mean. So I ended up buying the smaller diameter cylinder so that we have more room, and we didn't need that big cylinder. We're not running that big of a tire. So this is 1.5 inches. I think it's 1.5 inches. It was a smaller diameter anyway. Still 8-inch stroke, but smaller diameter. So it won't have as much power, pushing or pulling power, but it's still going to be more than enough for that thing. So we got the cylinder. I ended up buying just their ported box, 3-turn. This is the upgraded box. It's new. It's a new box. And it has the same 3 bolt holes that we're using now, but it has an additional bolt hole up here. So we are going to add a tab on our frame so that we can use all 4 of those bolt holes. So we'll end up using that one. So it's already ported for the cylinder, so that makes it really easy. This is an arm off of a 99 Grand Cherokee, that if they were to lift one. It's the same offset as an XJ arm, even though it's a lifted arm, but it's longer. So it gives us more throw, because I don't think our stock arm, even though I measured it and it seemed like it would work and get full steering, I don't think it actually does. So in fact, I know it doesn't actually get full steering. So that's why I did some research and found that this is a longer arm. But in my research, I did not find that the keys, where basically it's just missing a spline in the arm. On those 99 up Grand Cherokees, they're not symmetrical like on the XJ. Basically, they're going straight across from each other and straight forward and back from each other. And on that 99 Grand Cherokee, it puts them. It fits, but it puts it like there in center, which isn't going to work. So it's either there or it's down there. So that doesn't really work. So what I had to do is, and it's really easy to do, I just had to take a file and file the splines that basically were missing. So it just, if there were four what looked like keyways, but it's basically just where they didn't cut a groove from one of the splines. So I just used a file, and I'll show you how I did that. And it was really easy. It didn't take any time at all to do. So now we're infinitely adjustable. So you just have to pay a lot more attention when you're putting it together. Is all. All that is. That's the only reason they do that, is just so you stick it on there and it fits. But it doesn't make it any weaker. You still have every single spline is engaged. You just have a groove in the middle there that it wouldn't do anything anyway. So it is still good. We didn't compromise it in strength at all. So then this is so we can add a bearing down here to our cross member that we have to build. That'll be a later episode, building the cross member. But I have it all designed and everything, so once I get my parts, we can do the episode. But anyway, so we're gonna put a bearing down here so that it reinforces our steering box, so that the arm isn't trying to bend the bottom of the steering box around and wear that bearing out prematurely. So we're gonna end up using that. So that's just it's machined 1 inch. So you just need a 1 inch bearing. You can do it with a 2 bolt flange bearing. I have some custom bearings that I use on gates that I'm going to use, which has a industrial spherical bearing it's a sealed spherical bearing. It's good to like a ridiculous amount of weight, like 100,000 pounds or something like that. But I'm going to incorporate that into ours. So that's what we're going to use. But there's other options. If you were to buy a kit, it would just come with a 2 bolt flange bearing, most likely that would be in, and that works good too. Those handle more weight than you'd probably ever put on them in an off-roading situation anyway. So this week we'll put the box on. We'll get our arm on. We got to drill it for that 1-ton joint yet. We're going to mount our cylinder this week, and so we'll weld these brackets on the axle. It actually goes on the truss, and that'll hold the piston or the cylinder side. And then on the piston side, I'm going to use this clamp. And the reason we're using a clamp instead of welding ears onto that 1.5 inch DOM tubing is so that we get so that we can actually adjust it and not be limited to doing full turns of adjustment. Since we are going to drive this on the street a lot, we want to get our alignment a lot closer than that, than having only full turns of adjustment in it. So this clamps on, and then when you tighten your cylinder down, it also crimps, the bolt actually will also crimp into that tube, into that B1 tubing as well. So that's how it keeps it from trying to slide and stuff. It's clamped, and then it's extra clamped once you tighten that down. So that's that. So that cylinder, like I said, it's a little bit smaller diameter, so it gives us more clearance. That one was going to be very tight in there. That gives us a little bit more space, which is nice. Later this week, probably next episode, we'll be mounting this Hydroboost up in there. So it's really simple how these things work. It looks confusing when you see them on a rig. It's really not confusing at all, really, once you start looking at it. How they work is it just goes, you just have a normal power steering pump, which only has one high pressure line on it. The others are return lines. So it goes from your pump, your high pressure pump, goes to your booster, and then it just goes out of your booster into your power steering box, instead of going from the pump to the box, it just goes from booster to the box. And then you have the return off your box, but you have the additional return now off. That's the third line that's on your booster. So if you buy a pump that's meant for having Hydroboost, it'll have two return lines. If you don't have a pump meant for Hydroboost, it'll only have one. But you can tee it. I've done that a lot of times. It doesn't. It works just fine. I've never had a problem with teeing them and just going into that one single port. I've done it a lot. I have a lot of rigs running it that way right now. I've never had a problem with it. So it doesn't feel funny. It doesn't feel pressurized. It don't leak. It doesn't blow up. So it's fine. So now that we're talking about that, we are going to mount this pump up today. This is a pump off of a 454 that would have Hydroboost. And I bought it with the reservoir, so it had the right reservoir for running a remote reservoir. So it has that port up top, and that just a hose just goes from there to there. It's low pressure. It's just to transfer the fluid. This is just an extension reservoir basically. So you get that fluid that's all back there, which isn't a lot, and then the hose, which is a big hose, 3/4 inch hose. So if you run a long hose, you got a lot of fluid. And then a really good sized reservoir, and this is the factory reservoir off a Hydroboost truck. This one's off at 6.2. There's a difference. 6.2s have the port on the side. The 454 would have the port in the bottom, but they have the same mounting bracket here. This is the bracket off of a 6.2. So I happen to have this. That's what we're going to use. Those are kind of hard to find because you just don't see trucks with Hydroboost in the junkyards. So don't fret that you can buy aftermarket reservoirs. That's not that big of a deal. So anyway, so that's that. I am pretty sure this is going to bolt right up to the factory box on there. It looks to be the same bolt pattern, but I'm not sure if the pulley's going to work because the pulley on that one has a nut on it, and it looks like the shaft is bigger, but I don't know yet. We haven't taken it apart. We will see. Not that big of a deal. We can find a pulley that'll work. We just need to match the offset. Hopefully it bolts on. I mean, that might not bolt on either. We might have to make all sorts of stuff. This is the lines that came with the PSC kit. So this is all Eaton stuff. How it works is this is high pressure line, 3,400 PSI line, and then it comes with these fittings. And this is so you can custom make your lines. So you buy these fittings. So this nut here is threaded on the inside, and that threads onto your hose, and then you take this, and this actually goes inside. So you're going to oil this up, and it actually will squeeze that hose out as you're tightening this in. So that's basically how they get it to crimp on there. So and it works pretty well. It's really strong. I don't think it's going to leak at all. I know every hose that I've ever had on Hydroboost seeps, so they don't drip, but they seep, and they're always growing fuzz, the oil, and then all the dust sticks to the oil. So they're always growing fuzz like everywhere on them. So hopefully this will be better. So we're gonna end up trying to use, I'm gonna get this stuff to do all of our power steering component lines. So hopefully I'll have to get some adapters and stuff, I think, for the Hydroboost. I'm not sure what style they use. yeah, we're gonna have to get adapters and stuff so that we can use this style line. But I think we should be able to use those. So yeah, so that's that. This is just parts for mounting that up. So we'll get going here. I think first things first is I'll show you what I did to this arm, and then we'll drill and ream it out so that we can get that 110 joint in there. Okay, so I'm going to show you real quick. This is a really, really easy project. So if you are upgrading to a solid axle on an XJ, this is a perfect scenario. This is the exact same thing you'd be doing. 99 Grand Cherokee lift arm is longer. So if you are converting to a full-size front axle, this arm will work once you file it. So it's really easy to do. So you'll have your wide notch where there's a groove missing, or there's a spline missing. So just put your file in at that angle that I have it there. Let's do it over here. So yeah, we'll just do it down here, even though that's not actually where it would be. But you can see the angle. So start it in there at an angle and get it positioned so you can see really well on the back side, and just start a groove. And then pull it out and check it. Make sure that you're centered. If you're not centered, you can push the file one way or the other. Until you have that groove started nice and center. And once you're center, then start filing it like I'm doing there, the motion, and just work your way towards the front, keeping that centered. And you don't have to make it full depth right now. You're just trying to make a nice scratch going right down the middle. And then take it out, look at it, make sure you're nice and centered. And once you are, then you can just file it. And it doesn't take very long. The triangle file is the exact same angles as the factory file. So when you do this, it'll be just as good as one of the factory ones if you do it right. So just work your way in. Once you got it, just file it down and just keep pulling out and checking, making sure you're not going too deep. You don't want to go too deep. You want to go about the same depth as the factory. And there's a nice taper. They put a taper on there, and it just happens to be right at the end of the spline. So it works out pretty good. So anyway, you just do that for all four. It'll take you 20 minutes maybe. And just be careful. Take your time at it. It doesn't take long anyway. And then once you get it where you want it, you can actually just grab the other side and you don't need to go fast, but you can push kind of hard and just work that groove right nicely down. And then you'll end up with nice splines, and you won't be able to tell what ones you cut and what ones they cut, other than yours are shinier. So that's how I did that. So you start with a 5/8. Do a through drill. Obviously, I always do everything from the side you want the ball joint to be on. So we're going to through drill it 5/8 this way, and then we're going to come back and ream it. This goes pretty quick. All right, and here I am just changing the steering box in. Fast forward, everything went just smooth as can be. It did no problems. Everything lined up the same. Everything bolted up the same. So it was definitely a direct replacement for that steering box. So it went together just fine. And I tightened that arm off straight, and I checked for clearances and everything just to make sure that everything's still going to work. Okay, here we go with the cylinder. So what I did is I just turned it all the way left and pushed the cylinder came all the way pushed in. So that would be, everything's maxed out going right, I guess. Standing this way to the left. So now I'm going to put the cylinder in the back side of that steering arm like that. It's a really good thing I downsized it, because it's still really close to everything this way. So, but it should clear because it'll only get farther away as the steering goes away. I'm just kind of eyeballing where exactly this thing needs to be, and I kind of have a spot where it's going to be basically right between these two holes here, these ears and up. So I'm basically touching this, the rec tube up top. And so there's a weld there, so I can't push this all the way in, which almost seems to be a good thing. So the nut would work But I think it'll work either way. I'll just have to put the bolt in upside down. So I think that's how I'm going to run it. While those ears cool off, we'll go ahead and just go ahead straight into pulling the power steering pump out. The lines and everything are all disconnected, so all we got to do is get the pump out, just unbolt everything and get it out of there, and we can see what it's going to take to get the next one in. Okay, so these spacers go there. I found some bolts. I had them here, luckily. I don't have much in the way of metric stuff. Not organized anyway. Look at that, it's just perfect. Should have started with a bolt. I had to cut this bolt. There it goes. Before I tighten these, I'll have to go get an actual metric wrench. I'm using a 5/8 on a 15 right now, I think. And according to the bolts I took out of the other pump, these need to be about 1,000 foot-pounds. So there's that. So now that'll go on there like that. And I think we're set up to put that pump back in once we get the pulley on it. Everything looks right. The alternator sits right about there. So that'll be close. But I don't see it being a problem. Okay, so I took the nut off, and that pulley's not pressed on, and it's also keyed. So definitely not going to work on there. No, it's not even close. Not even close. So I was totally wrong. I thought that shaft would be bigger. It's actually smaller. That shaft's bigger. I got another pump outside that is this same pump that has a pulley on it. We'll go look and see if the offset's the same. Okay, so I came up with a pulley. I ended up modifying one. It's going to be pretty close. It's, well, let's look. It's a little more offset than the other. Which means we'll have to have it sticking out a little farther. But I think it's going to work. It's going to be about 200 thousandths in, I think, by everything that I'm looking at. But it should be pretty close. So we'll try it. We'll put it on there. I cut the inside. It was a double pulley, and I cut the inside one off so we could see in there better. And it wasn't the same. There's two belts on that car, but it wasn't the same spacing in between the belts. So I didn't even want to be tempted to try to put a belt on it or whatever and have one being offset. So I just cut it off so it didn't look funny. And then I just cleaned it up. I didn't even paint it, so I'm just going to put it on there. I'm not 100% convinced it's going to work. So, but we'll press that on there and we'll see if the offset's if we can get the offset within a usable range. It's going to be on there. You shoot probably 3/4 of an inch, well, a little more than 3/4 of an inch, so it should be okay. It's just not going to be on there all the way down. So anyway, we'll give it a shot and we'll see if it'll work. We got everything on. The cylinder's on now. I got the ports pointing up, which you're trading one possibility of interference for another. If we have them pointing down, obviously rocks and stuff, I don't think we want them pointing down. So I'm going to point them up. We're going to end up just running this one a 90 going that way, and it'll go around the truss to the back. We can't just go straight up. because the hose would have to be so long to accommodate our 12 inches of travel. It actually would be more than 12 inches all the way out here. The 12 inches of travel, you can't have a hose doing that. It would get tangled up in our steering linkage and everything else. So I don't think that's a really good idea. So we're going to run this one around the back. This one's going to come over this way, and it'll be down next to this one, and it's going to go down through this hole, and then they're going to go up the upper control arm together, and then they're going to do a U-turn back about 3/4 of the way up it and hit the frame, so there won't be that much motion that far up the control arm. So then they'll go up the frame, and I think I'm going to end up putting a pass-through hole here, and then they'll come through the hole through there, and then up to their fittings, which go right there. And then I'm going to move all the fuel line fittings and stuff down through that pass-through. I don't like them that close to the exhaust manifold. They're about 2 inches away, maybe not even quite 2 inches away from the factory, from the exhaust manifold, which is just I mean, obviously it worked, but I don't like it. So anyway, stay tuned. We'll see you next week for Hydroboost stuff.